Well, it didn't take him long, did it? Let's begin. Now, of course, it seems that Keir Starmer has already found a way to pee off a load of people. 17.4 million people, if you know what I mean. And of course, I'm guessing most of you will realise that is a number of people who voted Leave back in 2016 when we decided to give a virtual middle finger to the EU and said, no, we'll take it from here, thank you very much. And obviously since then, a lot of people, or Ramonas, haven't been too happy with that, have they? Seeming to try and dilute Brexit to be anything but. And obviously recently Keir Starmer, who remember, was Labour's original Brexit secretary and actually campaigned to have a second referendum, if I remember rightly, because obviously we did not make the decision he wanted us to, I guess. And in the run-up to the election, he obviously said that, don't worry, we'll not be re-entering the EU in our lifetimes, or rejoin the single market or customs union, if I remember correctly. However, it does seem that he is, let's just say, trying to work a way around that and not to what us Brexiteers would probably like. And I say that because according to this article it says Keir Starmer reveals work has already begun in ripping up Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, which obviously that deal in itself wasn't the no deal that most of us Brexiteers actually wanted to begin with. However, that is probably the best deal we were allowed to have. And I say allowed like that because, in all honesty, we should have just left no deal, shouldn't we? Because remember, we still had a 2-year transition period in which to sort things out, so I'm guessing we would have been okay, but Ramonas just don't like to hear that, do they? But what Keir Starmer is now doing is he's ripping that deal up, not to get further towards Brexit, but according to this, it says that the new PM is eyeing closer ties with Brussels after his landslide election win. Closer does not mean leaving, does it? If anything, that's going to be entering the EU via the back door. And no doubt, of course, as it seemed for ages, whenever you want to agree with something with the EU, it appears their concern is, right, what are we going to get out of this? And it just seems that we are the ones who always end up paying out, rather than having a decent negotiation. At the end of the day, we have left, whether they like it or not. And if Keir Starmer is true to his word, which to be honest I highly doubt, that we are not going to go back in, then he needs to realise that. But just what does he want to change about it then? Well, apparently, according to this, it says the new Prime Minister said he wanted a better trading and security relationships with Brussels as he vowed to rip up the botched Brexit deal struck by Boris Johnson. Actually, Theresa May was, let's face it, the original person behind that deal, and also Boris didn't really have much time, did he, to negotiate much before the deadline. So he was faced with two choices, I'm guessing, either rip up the deal and go no deal, which unfortunately a lot of Ramonas would have kicked up a fuss about, or stick with a tweaked version of the deal, which obviously is what he done. And I'm guessing that deal was the most that the EU were going to compensate on. Otherwise, let's face it, we'd have had a lot more, wouldn't we? But what does Keir Starmer say about it? Well, apparently speaking to reporters in Edinburgh, Sir Keir said, we intend to improve our relationship with the EU, and that means closer ties with the EU. It means closer ties in relation to research and development, and closer ties in relation to defence and security. So therefore, I'm guessing, if anything, that means that we'll be all in with the EU, apart from trade, I'm guessing. Either way, though, whilst we appear to be reintegrating into the EU, no doubt, of course, we'll have to follow any of their rules and regulations with all these new things, surely. And therefore, that means that our sovereignty is going to be just slowly dwindling away back into the pockets of his EU masters, which, let's face it, he more than likely would love to do. But he even says here that obviously there are many discussions to be had and negotiations to be had. But I do think that we can get a much better deal than that botched deal that Boris Johnson saddled the UK with. Actually, to be honest, I think the most recent botched deal we got is Rishi's Windsor framework, because that, if anything, shackles us to the EU via Northern Ireland, doesn't it? Because it essentially leaves Northern Ireland within the EU, as they still appear to have to follow their rules and stuff. However, we cannot now deviate that much, because Northern Ireland will get pissed off saying, well, how come England has just done this? We want to do it as well. So, in honesty, I think the only way that the deal can improve is if we scrap it completely and go no deal. But Keir's not going to want to do that. If he wants to, let's face it, give the EU, how can I put this, a happy ending, eh? But what Keir surely doesn't get is that if he wants something extra from the EU, they're not just going to give it to him, are they? They're not just going to welcome him back and go, oh, we missed you, Sir Keir. Oh, you want that from us, do you? Oh, okay, that will be fine. They'll more than likely be going, right, okay, well, before we even think about doing that, we want this, this and this from you. And if you can't give it, then tough, eh? But Sir Keir added that it depends on respectful relationships, talking to leaders across the EU, and of course, that work has already begun. In fact, I'll bet you any money you like, that work probably happened whilst he was probably campaigning. He more than likely went or sent someone to go and have a word and say, right, what can we give you to get this, and then just settled with that. Although admittedly, I could be wrong. The Labour leader, of course, says here, backed Remain, and a second referendum has previously ruled out rejoining the single market and customs union, as well as a return to freedom of movement. But that might not be so, because a bit further down in the article it says that Brexit has happened and the people of Britain made that decision. But absolutely there is space to have a veterinary agreement, and is there space in terms of student mobility, which surely that means keeping an end to the freedom of movement for everyone else apart from students, who I guess can just go across the EU as much as they like. So if you want to come here, and let's face it, you don't want to fill out that pesky paperwork, then more than likely you'll just need to sign up for a college course here or something like that, I'm guessing. But what they're failing to realise is, obviously, whilst Erasmus, which was the freedom of movement of students back when we were in the EU, as far as I'm aware, we now have something called the Turing Project, which is where our students can go anywhere in the world, not just the EU. So will that mean we now have to give that up, which was, let's face it, is going to pee off a load of students everywhere, I'm guessing. And get this, David Lammy, our new Foreign Secretary, has already travelled to Europe to meet his counterparts in Germany, Poland and Sweden. And writing in the local Europe ahead of his trip over the weekend, Mr Lammy said, as the new British Foreign Secretary with our Prime Minister Keir Starmer, this government will reset relations with Europe as a reliable partner, a dependable ally and a good neighbour. And he went on, if we are to fulfil our ambitions for a reset, we must also improve Britain's relationship with the European Union. Why do people keep saying this? Surely any country will be happy to do deals with us and us do deals with them, and vice versa. And that's all the EU should have been, just a trading arrangement. So if we've got a deal already worked out where we can trade with each other, then what's their problem? No doubt the EU's problem is that they can't govern us anymore, and I've got sour grapes about that, but that's just tough, I'm afraid. However, it looks like us 17.4 million people who voted Brexit are about to be very peed off indeed, because it says that David Lammy said that the government's proposal for an ambitious and broad-ranging UK-EU security pact would seek to underpin a closer cooperation between us, which, let's face it, is anything but Brexit, surely, eh? But that's not it. He even says that today we all share a commitment to democracy, human rights and international law. And I believe that these values also offer a foundation for a closer partnership in future. And my visit this weekend is just the beginning, and I look forward to seeing Britain reconnect with our European neighbours in the years ahead. So that is, in my opinion, and admittedly, I could be wrong, but in my opinion, that is them saying, yes, we are going to go back to the EU, but we'll be going it slowly. So all those silly Brexiteers out there, in their view probably, won't notice this is happening. Well, sorry, David and Keir, I've noticed already, and I'm not happy about it, and I'm telling you guys. So maybe, just maybe, they might have second thoughts, eh? Although hopefully Nigel will stand up in the House of Commons and slap this down before it even starts. Even the Irish Premier, Simon Harris, said there is a willingness in the EU to talk to the UK government. Well, there's a surprise. No doubt they'll think, oh, good, let's start getting that money rolling into us. And tell them what to do, eh? Well, sorry, EU, but hopefully, with the help of Nigel and the other Reform MPs, you'll be told, no.